interest rate on subsidized student loans will double if Congress fails to act. This is not only wrong, it is unnecessary. Senator Harkin and Senator Reid have proposed a plan to hold the interest rate steady at 3.4% for 2 years. This will give Congress time to develop a long-term plan to address the rising burden of student loan debt, a long-term plan that keeps interest rates low and that addresses rising college costs. Now, 2 weeks ago, a majority of senators in this body voted to approve this temporary extension to provide a measure of relief to our families. Unfortunately, Republicans have decided to filibuster this bill, blocking a measure that has majority support. That's not the way our democracy should work. I met with students in Massachusetts earlier this week. They told me we need to fix this problem. They said to me, "Don't double my rate. Don't double my rate." Dozens of Massachusetts universities have asked us to step in and to help their students. Petitions urging us to stop interest rates from doubling on July 1st have collected more than 1 million signatures. Students, parents, families are asking for help. They don't have time for politics. So, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the majority leader, following consultation with the Republican leader, the Senate proceed immediately to consideration of calendar number 74S953, the Student Loan Affordability Act, and that the bill be read a third time. The Senate proceed to vote on passage of the bill, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator for North Carolina.
Madam President, reserving the right to object. My good friend and colleague from Massachusetts stated that students in Massachusetts had come up and said, "Senator, fix the student loan program. Fix it." She said that what Republicans have done is filibustered it. The fact is that what Republicans offered was a fix. What the senator comes to the floor today to do is to have a 2-year extension of a student loan program that the Secretary of Education admits doesn't fix the problem. As a matter of fact, in an article in a Washington paper today, the Secretary of Education, Secretary Duncan, is very clear and implores the Senate and the Congress, fix it. Find a long-term solution. Let me state for my colleagues that what the senator from Massachusetts is here to do is to extend a preferred interest rate of 3.4% for 2 years on 39% of the student loans that are taken out. You see, current law is that for subsidized student loans, they're subsidized at 3.4%. And that preferred half or 50% cut is effective until the end of June. But under current law today, the unsubsidized Stafford loans are at 6.8%. The parent and graduate plus loans are at 7.9%. And my colleague's amendment only covers the subsidized Stafford loans that are 39% of all the loans that are administered. So what her proposal says is, we're not going to fix it. We're going to kick the can down the road for 2 more years. And to the parents and to those that don't get subsidized Stafford loans, we're going to continue to charge you double what we charge other students. Now, let me just say, if you look at the math, where we are is unsustainable. Now, I understand that when we voted on a Republican alternative the last week, it was the Alexander, Coburn, Burr bill, where we actually wanted to tie the interest rate on an annual basis to the rate of the 10-year Treasury bond. And the advantage was that if you locked that in any given year, that was your interest rate for the entire life of the loan. What students want is predictability. What they want to do is understand how much is it going to cost them for their education, not this year, but over the life of having to pay it off. Well, you know what? We put a proposal on the table and it was routinely rejected, even though it was a solution. It was a fix. It was what the president's called for. It's what the Secretary of Education called for. The president also proposed a fix. The president's, I don't agree with all aspects of it, but it's a start. It's the nucleus of a compromise. And in the president's bill, he ties everything to the 10-year Treasury bond. Very similar to the fix that Republicans came up with. Here's the difference. The president ties subsidized loans to the Treasury price of the Treasury bill plus 0.93. Ours was 3.0. On unsubsidized Stafford loans, it was 10-year Treasury bill plus 2.93, almost identical to the Republican proposal. And for parents and graduates, the president's bill called for a 10-year bond rate and plus 3.93%. So if you do the math and you look at 60% of it not being subsidized and 40% being subsidized, what Republicans laid on the table and what the president laid on the table are very similar. As a matter of fact, both the Republican proposal and the president's proposal said, let's fix the rate for the life of the loan. So not only am I being asked today to agree to a unanimous consent request to take up a bill that doesn't fix the problem, I'm being asked to grant unanimous consent to a bill that doesn't even extend the same rate for the life of the loan for the students that are borrowing it.
Reserving the right to object. I would like to focus on three words that the Senator Burr discussed here, and that is unsustainable, everybody, and fix. I heard all three, and I think all three are very important words here. So let's just go through this and figure out what it is that the senator is proposing and what it is we need to do. You know, right now we have a student loan program that produces $51 billion in profits this year off the backs of our students. $51 billion. And yes, Senator, I think that's unsustainable. We must find a way to deal with that. In fact, the Republicans did put a proposal on the table. Their proposal would have increased profits to the federal government from the student loan program by another $16 billion. So the Republicans' plan was to say, let's take a debt load that's already too difficult for students to deal with, and let's make it harder. That is, in my view, completely unsustainable. We've got to do better than that. Now, the question the senator also raises is one about everybody. We need to fix this problem for everybody, and I agree with the senator. We do indeed need to fix this problem for everybody. But let's think about what this is. What we're talking about here is about student interest rates that are about to double. And what the Democrats have proposed, what I propose in the original request for a UC, is that we not let those interest rates double, and we use that time to try to develop a comprehensive way to deal with the rising costs of college and with the $1 trillion of college loan debt that is outstanding. In other words, we recognize this is a narrow slice. This is to prevent our students from facing a double interest rate, a doubling of their interest rates on July 1st. And we say we will use this time in order to get a comprehensive answer for all of our students. What the senator has proposed and what he has asked for unanimous consent on is not that. It is only a narrow slice of the question of how we're going to deal with interest rates on loans going forward. It doesn't deal with the the loans outstanding, and it certainly doesn't deal with the rising costs of college. They want to put this problem to bed by saying that one problem we'll deal with and we'll move on. And let's keep in mind, we've seen what the Republican plan will do. The Republican plan will cost our students an additional $16 billion. That's the plan. Take a problem and make it worse. but not something that's sustainable and not something that fixes it for everyone. The third point he raised is he used the question of fix. And I think fix is exactly what we're talking about here. We have three different kinds of problems that we need to solve. We have the problem of $1 trillion of outstanding student loan debt that is crushing our students. We have the problem of rising rising costs for college. We must deal with this. And we have the immediate problem of interest rates about to double for our students. We can fix one of those problems in the next 2 weeks. We could fix it today. We could fix it by unanimous consent right now. And then we could agree to sit down on a bipartisan basis, and we could work together to try to solve the larger problems. That's what our students are asking for. That's what we need to do. One last point I want to make. I noticed that Senator Burr cites the Congressional Budget Office study. Let's just be clear what that same study he cited right from the beginning. The Congressional Budget Office projects that the total cost to the federal government of student loans dispersed between 2013 and 2023, I believe that's what you were referring to, Senator, will be negative. That is, the student loan program will produce savings that reduce the debt. Don't let anyone be confused by what that language means. Produce savings that reduce the debt means our kids have become a profit center for the United States government. That right now this government will lend to large financial institutions at less than 1% interest, but the plan is continue to produce profits off the backs of our kids, and not small profits, tens of billions of dollars of profits. $51 billion projected this year, the Republicans asking for another $16 billion. We can't do that. We need a sustainable answer here. We need a fix that encompasses all of our students, all of our families, and for that reason, Madam President, I object.
I'm going to come out and object to anything that does not solve the problem long term. I don't want to go home and look at kids and tell them that the rate that they agree to this year is not the rate for the entirety of the loan period. That's not the case under this bill. I'm not going to go home and look at two different students who we have put in two different categories and tell one, now you got to pay 3.4%, but you've got to pay 6.8%. That's wrong. It is not our role to pick winners and losers. I would turn to my good friend from Massachusetts and say to her, have I in any way, shape, or form misstated what her proposal does, which is extend the 3.4%, which is limited only to subsidized Stafford loans?
So I just want to return to this question since the senator has raised it about the Congressional Budget Office, and let's all be clear about what the current student loan interest rates produce for the United States government. The CBO, the agency in charge of estimating these costs for the government, maintains that this year the United States government will make $51 billion in profits from the student loans. Their most recent report on this, I read the language earlier, is clear and direct. We will make a profit. Now, the CBO uses this accounting method because it reflects reality. It's the reality of how these loans affect the federal budget. The CBO's method takes into account the cost of lending money from the Treasury and the projected money that will be returned to the Treasury. It takes into account the risk that the students will default. In other words, it's basic math. Some people don't like the idea that the government is profiting from student loans, so their approach is to try to change the accounting rules to treat the government as if it were a private bank rather than the federal government, which it is. The government is not a bank in the private market. If we want to reduce the profits from student loans, then we should actually reduce the profits from student loans, not change the math, not bury our heads in the sand and pretend that those profits don't exist. So let's go back to what the senator has proposed. The Republicans propose that we take $51 billion in profits that will currently be made from the backs of our students and add another $16 billion in profits for off the backs of our students. This is just fundamentally wrong. It is not sustainable. But I think the larger point that the senator makes is one that says we have a big problem here. We need to talk about the debt that's outstanding. We need to talk about how we're going to pay for college over time. We can't do that in the next 2 weeks. We need to make sure interest rates don't double, and then we need to address this problem, and I'm glad to work with people on both sides of the aisle on this.
Does the senator from Massachusetts agree that out of the student loan fund, $8.7 billion is diverted to the Affordable Care Act?
No.
The gentlelady's not aware of that?
So, look, we can go back over this. We can go back over the CBO numbers. But what is clear right now is the CBO has made clear we will make $51 billion in profits off the backs of our students. The Republicans propose to make another $16 billion off the backs of our students. We can't do that. It is unsustainable. Our students are asking for more.
I thank my colleague for not answering.